Welcome back to another episode of Lost in the Farmer's Market Garden Shorts. Now today we have this lovely specimen. This one was recommended by one of our viewers, and what the hell, why not? In case you're wondering what this interesting plant is, this is rhubarb. Its scientific name is Rheum rhabarbarum. Yeah, I know. That's an interesting name. It's in the Polygonaceae family, which includes it in the same family as the Vietnamese coriander, or the knotweeds. Doesn't look like a knotweed, but it is. How about that? Rheum comes from rheumaticus, or trouble with rheum. Rheum means flow, and is named in this case for the sap of this plant. Now, for historical context, the Greeks used to believe that rheum was something that flowed through the body. It's usually considered a milky or tear-like substance, which led to the humorous theory of medicine. Now, Rha Barbarum comes from the Rha River, which is the present Vouge River, and the word barbarian. Ancient Romans imported rhubarb roots from across the Rha River from quote-unquote barbarian lands. So Rha Barbarum. It originally was called Rha Barbarum, and then the words merged to form rhubarb, which is a little crazy when you think about it, but the linguistics are very interesting. Now, in case you're wondering about this particular specimen here, you can see that its stems are not very red. Now, I know what you're thinking out there. You rhubarb fans are going, what kind of blasphemous rhubarb has green stems? Well, as it turns out, sometimes they revert. The red stems that you're used to, actually they are got a little reddish tinge in there. Look at that. Delicious. Well, sometimes they revert, and my rhubarb has decided to be different. I'm okay with that. I virtually never harvest it for stalks anyway. But the interesting thing is that the green stems are just as edible as the red stems. They're just less tart, which makes for a different dish. Perhaps rhubarb pie with extra strawberries and a little cranberry to add in the tartness, maybe. Now here's the interesting thing. Medicinal use of rhubarb goes back 5,000 years when the Chinese used the dried roots as a laxative. The astringent effects followed the cathartic ones. Blah. Yeah, I dropped that word pretty badly, didn't I? Well, anyway, they followed afterwards, so it was a push and shove kind of moment, if you get my drift. Oh, don't worry, folks. Tip the waitress. I'll be here all week. Culinary use was started in the 1800s and peaked before World War II, when rationing, particularly sugar rationing, happened, reducing the ability to sweeten it and mellow out the tart effects. Interestingly, rhubarb is considered a dessert vegetable. I don't know of anything else that is called a dessert vegetable, but rhubarb is one of them. Now, here's a neat fact. It wasn't until 1824 that the rhubarb-strawberry combination was invented in tarts by Joseph Myatt, a nurseryman. See, us horticulturists and nurserymen fall under that category. We know where it's at, baby. Now, and that led to the rhubarb-strawberry combination that everyone pretty much takes for granted these days. I mean, I'm sure there's other things you can do with rhubarb, but that's what everyone thinks of. Now, the problem with rhubarb is that it hybridizes so easily that getting roots from a credible source is key. Meaning that, well, if you kind of cheap out, you're going to end up with a rhubarb that might be red for a while and then turn green, because its pedigree is not quite assured. The primary variety grown in the United States is Victoria, which is a tried and true perennial variety. Now, and yes, rhubarb is perennial, but it's considered a deciduous perennial. Beyond that, most of America's rhubarb comes from Washington State. 275 acres approximate produces most of our rhubarb. There are other states that produce it, but Washington is the king of it, and go Washington. The best part is that there are over 100 varieties known, though there's not much research, well, there is research, but I mean not as much as, say, corn, the most boring vegetable in the universe. Not as much research going into hybridizing, improving, or actually adapting this particular dessert vegetable. It almost sounds like the argument over ketchup, really. This dessert vegetable to more climates, bigger stalks, less of those leaves, or smaller leaves maybe. I should point out, the leaves of rhubarb, specifically leaves, are incredibly poisonous. Do not eat them. They can cause all kinds of nasty things. I believe it's through the actions of oxalic acid. So what you're harvesting will be the stalks. If you're doing medicinal use, it'll be the roots, though why someone would tear up a perfectly good patch of rhubarb, you got me. There is only one other fact that you need to know about rhubarb before the end of this video, and that is, wise men say, never touch another man's rhubarb. I'll leave you with that, and as always, folks, keep them growing.